never a big spender. So
Okay.
I say I made great money in management consulting. There's a lot of money to be made there. And so my salary was high. I used the BRRRR method for a lot of my properties. So I'd buy, the worst property in the best neighborhoods. We would renovate those, and then I would cash out refi those and keep rolling the money over.
This show is brought to you today by Lightbulb Podcasting. Are you a busy professional that needs to get more time back in their schedule? If you are a podcaster like me, you have enough on your plate. Why not outsource your podcast production? From editing, show notes, keywords, scheduling, volume balancing, and editing, and creating audiograms, podcast production is another job in and of itself. That's why I use Lightbulb Podcasting. Get phenomenal support at an affordable price while you concentrate on growing your brand. Go to www.lightbulbpodcasting.com today to schedule an introductory call. Put your content in the spotlight.
Are you tired of the 9-to-5 lifestyle? Do you want more freedom to do what you want, when you want it, without sacrificing your current income? Then this is the show for you. Every week, we dive into John's journey towards financial freedom and everything he has learned since 2014. Real estate investing, cryptocurrency, stocks, private lending, foreign residency, tax saving strategies, infinite banking, assets protection, and much more. Now, here is your host, the founder of the Wealth and Freedom Nexus, John Rickgarn.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're listening to this. This is John Rickgarn, your host, as always, of the Wealth and Freedom Nexus podcast. Now, if you've been following me for some time, you know that I basically introduced myself as an investor, an educator, and a realtor in that order, basically, especially when it comes to real estate. And today's guest I brought on shares many of those same qualities. She is a real estate investor as well. She is an educator by helping the world famous Keith Weinhold on his Get Rich Education platform, and as a realtor, well, just like myself. So wanted to bring her on to share her knowledge, her investment journey, and maybe learn a little bit more behind the scenes of the Get Rich Education world, so to speak. With that, Aundrea, welcome to the show.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, John. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, glad to have you. Sorry again for all the reschedules between COVID and mostly on my part, daycare being shut down and just everything off the beaten path.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before this. I am right there with you. I completely understand, and I think everybody's kind of in that boat, the last year or so.
Yeah, it's been being a new father. My son turns 7 months as of tomorrow with this recording. So just daddy daycare takes precedence over everything else. So.
Yep, right there with you. I have a 1-year-old, so I know how you feel.
Not much different.
Yes.
So maybe, Aundrea, maybe you can just start off by introducing yourself to my listeners. I know, before we hit record, you're actually kind of I don't want to say a digital nomad, but you're a little agnostic as far as where you live versus where you work versus where, your various businesses and investments are located. So you want to just kind of give a brief background on yourself and your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, I'm somewhat nomadic. I can be when I want. So,
sure.
My background, I actually come from a typical W-2 background. I finished my MBA. I did many years in management consulting, worked in the mortgage industry. In 2016, I woke up one morning and literally said, I am not doing this for the rest of my life. It was a day where I had been on a flight I started off in Dallas. I went to Manhattan and I ended the night in Chicago, and I said, I'm done with this. So, yes, it was a pretty crazy schedule, flying all the time. And I woke up and I said, I'm not going to do this. So how can I achieve financial freedom to be able to get out of that job? And so that's where real estate investing came in for me.
Gotcha.
So it's been, 6 years of investing now. So not that long, but it feels a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you know how that is. It's a crazy world.
Yep. And 2016, that was when I started my investment journey. 2014, I kind of had my aha moment. I was wasn't flying, to Dallas, to Chicago, to Manhattan, but was on the road sales, wasn't uncommon to put 200 miles a day on the road, and just kind of had my aha moment of, okay, this is a grind. I've been doing it for too many years. I can't do this until I'm, 50, 60, 70 years old.
Yes, we have everything you're telling me. We just have so much in common because, it was the exact same thing, same timing kind of.
Yeah.
So I first purchased a condo. I lived in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, and decided real estate was the best thing to do. So purchased a condo. And now I don't purchase condos. I actually try to stay away from them when I can, but it was a great investment because if anybody knows Atlanta, it's right on Piedmont Park, which is, a great area, lots of tourists, things like that, very desirable area.
Okay.
And I lived there for a couple of months and then ended up changing and moving to Chicago for work.
Okay.
So I ended up renting that place out as a short-term rental until they banned those, which is a whole other story, and then shifted that to long-term. And, prices were appreciating quite a bit in Atlanta. So, hung on to that for a couple years, sold it, 1031 exchanged it. But in the time, I just bought as many properties as I could. So, buying 5-6 properties a year for the past several years.
Wow.
And it's been a ride since then. So,
all right. So now you sold the condo in Atlanta and I know you said 5 properties or so a year. I'm sure there's at least one of my listeners out there just wondering, it's like, well, I can barely afford 1 property a year. How in the world are you able to do this? Or where are you finding all the properties to buy 5 in a year?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, I was never a big spender. So I made great money in management consulting. There's a lot of money to be made there. And so my salary was high. I used the BRRRR method for a lot of my properties. So I'd buy, the worst property in the best neighborhoods. We would renovate those and then I would cash out refi those and keep rolling the money over. So yeah, so you add that to my salary and I had the capital without having to bring other partners into the deals at the time. So
yeah, I myself have not done the BRRRR method per se. I've done a lot of, cash out refinances, but yeah, it's one way to, if you have a chunk of money to roll that chunk of money to property 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus I need 5 chunks of property to buy or 5 chunks of money to buy 5 properties. So
yeah, exactly. And, that was kind of the main strategy that I would use. There were times where, I'd come in and I'd just say, all right, well, I'm going to pay cash for a property and then I'd refinance out and pull that money out too. So it just depended on what I needed to do to get the deal done at the time.
Okay. Sounds good. These, I know you mentioned the condo down in Atlanta. Were all these properties in Atlanta? Were they throughout the United States or where exactly were they all located at?
Yeah. So no. So that was the Atlanta property, and because of property, prices rising and taxes rising, I was seeing a bit of a compression in my margins and profit there. So I actually shifted down to South Georgia on the coast, which is where I was born and raised.
Okay.
It's an area called the Golden Isles. If you've ever heard of the creature from Jekyll Island, yes, that area there is where I started investing very heavily and still do today.
Okay.
So the prices are lower, the rents are very high for the area, and I can tell you all the reasons for that. It's odd, but that's where I predominantly invest.
Okay. So, now you piqued my interest. So the rents are high and the prices are low. So what are some of the reasons of that?
Yeah. So the area is kind of, I don't want to call it, an undiscovered area because there is a lot of investment money coming in now.
Okay.
But, number one, it's on the coast. So there's a lot of tourism that comes in. That brings a lot of people every year, and you have a lot of short-term rentals there for that reason.
Okay.
Number two, we have a federal law enforcement training center, and it's one of, I think, just a couple in the country where they train, Border Patrol agents, customs, things like that. And so what happens with that is they bring in instructors that come in on, 6, 7, 9-month year assignments. And those instructors are getting, high per diems from the government, and they can afford to rent the nice properties there, which kind of pushes the rents up for everybody else.
Okay.
So that's one of the second reasons for that. And then the third is we just have a really interesting downtown area in the mainland, so not on the islands. And there's a lot of commercial investment money coming into there. There's, a port that's expanding, things like that. And so the area is getting really popular with kind of your hipster crowd that can, drive within 2 to 3 hours and get there and visit the breweries and distilleries and things like that.
Okay. All right. Well, I just learned of a new market area, and now I mentioned brewery. I think I might just have to check that out solely for the beers.
Hey, come down. I'll meet you there. We'll go out for a beer anytime.
Perfect. Or 2 or 3 or 4. Yeah.
Right.
I tend to always get the flights. It's like, well, that looks good. That looks good. I'll do, pour of this, a pour of that. And 20 shots later, I need an Uber. So
we have plenty of those too. So
gotcha. So now I'm just curious. And, with my personal journey, I started investing in real estate in 2016, kind of like when you had your aha moment. And then I ended up getting my real estate license in early 2020, of course, right before COVID hit, perfect time to, start doing that. But were you a realtor first and then an investor, or did you become a realtor later, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I was not. And the reason I became a realtor was because I could not find a real estate agent in the market, Brunswick, Golden Isles, that actually understood numbers. So
Gotcha.
Hired one, hired two. I would ask them, is this a good investment? It's a great investment. Of course, it's a great investment.
Oh, yeah.
Why?
It's got new granite countertops and
Yes.
It's close to the school. Yeah.
Yeah. So I couldn't find an agent that really understood the numbers. And I got tired of having to wait on an agent to get me into property. So I said, let me just go get my license for myself. So that's kind of how that came to fruition.
Okay. Yeah. Similar with me. I mean, for me, it was more, I had a good relationship with a realtor, but I guess just kind of felt bad of constantly annoying of can you give me some info on this property? Can I get in this property? Can I set up a showing? So I was like, well, if I get my license, I can just do that on my own. So definitely can understand that there. So and then as a realtor now, you're licensed in 2 states, is that correct? Or
I'm licensed in Georgia right now. I'm about to be licensed in Michigan and then also Ohio. So I'm working on both of those at the moment.
Michigan and Ohio. Okay. And now I don't know, there's think about the Great Recession. I think maybe Michigan's, I don't know, maybe puts a bad taste in some people's mouths, but are you or will you be investing in Michigan, or do you see some, opportunities there that might be under the radar than some other markets?
Yeah. So, one thing that's interesting, a lot of people don't know this, is Michigan, people do know this. It has been a mass exodus for the past 30 plus years, right? So a lot of people have been leaving. A lot of the job creation just hasn't been there. This past census, it was almost a break even for the first time in 30 years. So people are not leaving the state as much as they used to.
Okay.
And there's even some people that'll tell you that there were some things going on with the census where they kind of just pulled it early and quit actually doing the door to door. So, it could have been a gain this year. So we're seeing a lot of investment and development coming into the downtown Detroit area. It is growing. I don't think it's going to grow as much as the southern states, obviously, right? You're not going to see growth like Florida, Georgia, et cetera. However, there still are a lot of companies here. There's a lot of people that still travel here for work, for vacation, family members live here. And so I'm actually looking in the short-term rental space. I want to do short-term rentals here, as well as kind of mid-term rentals for, instances where an insurance company needs to place a family because, their house burned down or there's a leak or things like that. So that's kind of the market I'm looking at right now.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. I've been, hit up by a few companies and some investors. I know, I think like right after the Great Recession, I was reading just some, ridiculous pricing, like someone could buy a house for $5,000 or $10,000, after the Great Recession. And yes, it needed a lot of work, but you figure like, well, you could tear this down and the land would probably be worth that. So, I could see some, forced appreciation in that. I don't know, not to say I would never invest there, but I just always looked at Detroit like, well, the big 3 car manufacturers, centralized, but I personally never even thought about the short-term rental space. And I think, that's definitely an emerging market and way to get in extra income as long as the jurisdiction doesn't outlaw it. Like
that is correct.
Some areas have, yes.
That's correct. That's a risk in a lot of different markets right now. So you have to keep your eye on that.
Previous guest, Joey Murray with Wealth Without Wall Street. And the nice thing about the short-term rentals, and again, be upfront with your landlord. A lot of people think, I must have to buy this condo or whatever, and then I rent it out. It's like, well, you can do rental arbitrage. You rent it on a long-term basis, and then you essentially sublease on a short-term basis. Please be upfront with your tenant. A lot of times they have language in there, do not sublease. But if you're upfront, the landlord's fine with it. They still collect the rent, and you run it like a business, not a hobby, and say, hey, going to invite all my drinking buddies to do a game of poker or something on Saturday night. Run it like a business. And, if you can collect 3,000 gross short-term, it costs you, I don't know, 1,000 a month as a long-term. That's kind of a nice spread to make some arbitrage, and you don't own the property.
Absolutely. A lot of people use that strategy.
Cool. So, all right. And then you said you're moving into the Ohio market then as well. I'm guessing that's Northern Ohio, or?
Correct. We'll be looking probably at targeting like Toledo.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So you've been an investor for a number of years, Aundrea, and Obviously a realtor just like me, and you probably have a very interesting connection as far as the educator piece that, I educate people through my podcast, my YouTube channel, etc. But you're, I believe, the COO of the Get Rich Education world or company. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, COO of Get Rich Education. And we're just like you, we're a podcast educational platform for investors, real estate investors specifically.
Okay.
And I have been there for about 2 years now, kind of working behind the scenes. I don't do much in terms of the interviews and things like that. Keith handles all of that. But yeah, it's been a wild ride. And I absolutely love working for a company that helps people build that financial freedom.
Gotcha. No, I'm just curious, and maybe my listeners are too. And granted, with the COVID 2019 and pandemic and work from home lifestyle, nomadic lifestyle, I'm sure they probably heard about this. It's like, well, wait a second, Keith's all the way up in the tundra in Alaska, and you're down in Georgia, now in Michigan. But how in the world did you connect with him? And how did you get, working with Get Rich Education? How are you able to do that when you're 2-3 time zones away? This show is brought to you today by Timothy Hero with Hero Mortgages. Did you know traditional lenders cap you at no more than 10 rental loans in your name? Many have complicated underwriting processes, and if you are self-employed, even more documentation and income verification is needed. Why not work with a loan broker that can get you the best terms with an unlimited amount of loans for your investment properties? 30-year fixed rates starting at 5.8%. These loans do not report on your credit report, can be done right in an LLC, and can be used for 1 to 30 unit properties or portfolios, all with faster closing times and less documentation than a traditional lender will require. Check out episode number 17 for more info, or go to timothyhero.com to get a quote today.
Yeah, that's a good question. So Keith was actually one of the people that got me into real estate investing, and I didn't know him personally, but listening to his podcast and the education he provided, he really catapulted me to do that. So I had been an avid follower of him for quite some time. And he had started growing to the point he was looking for someone to come on and help with the operations in the background. And he had posted about it, and I reached out, and that was it. It's history. Wow. Now we're there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Interesting story. Yeah. And definitely a big shout out to Keith Weinhold. He was soon after I learned of what the hell is a podcast, I somehow stumbled across his, this was I want to say early 2015. Somehow I stumbled across his podcast. I've listened to every single one of his religiously. I've invested, I don't want to say alongside of him, but also, with Mid-South home buyers in Memphis, Spartan Invest in Birmingham. I've been looking at build to rents in Central Florida with Wagner and Velasco. So he's definitely provided a lot of content and education throughout the years. And I think he's just a wealth of knowledge, especially when it comes to real estate investing. So
he is. He's a very smart man. He, is a great person. And I think that's saying a lot. You got a lot of podcasters out here that are good at what they do and they provide education, but he's just such a genuinely good person. He cares about his team. He cares about his listeners and investors. So I think that's one of the kind of selling points with Keith for me personally. But yeah, he's built these relationships with different turnkey providers across the country and even internationally in some cases. And he's able to kind of pair our listeners with those people to be able to find good cash flowing properties. And, he takes the work on to do the vetting and making sure that they're, good companies and all of that. So it kind of cuts out the middleman for you.
Okay. I've been following the Get Rich Education, podcast and been a subscriber for several years now. And recently I know you made a change where I know, you used to go just Get Rich Education, and then maybe you had, / Orlando or / whatever market. And then it would sign up, and then sometimes you'd get an error message like, you've already signed up for this. It's like, well, no, that was for that provider. I want to get info on this provider. But now you and Keith have kind of more centralized that to maybe like is a marketplace the right word for that? Or how is that configured now for investors that are looking for cash flowing investment properties?
Yes, that was when I joined the company. That was kind of one of my personal pain points too, is how can we be able to find a way to get our listeners access to all the providers in one place without any technical glitches or having to subscribe to each single person, So we've created the GRE Marketplace. You can find it at www.gremarketplace.com. And what that is a site that really houses all of our turnkey providers in one place.
Okay.
We also have, 1031 exchange providers, access to lenders, kind of everything that you need from a full stop, like how do I get a loan? If I'm transferring a property, I'm selling and need to do a 1031 exchange, I need a provider for that, all the way to closing and finding the property and then finding the property managers. So you have access to all of our providers right there.
Wow. And now I believe, I know Keith has, pitched this for years too. I mean, these are, companies, properties, markets that he himself has knowledge with too. It's not a matter of, ABC company says, hey, Keith, we'll pay you $20,000 if you pitch us on this work site, even though no one's heard of, Manhattan or some suburb that would be a crappy market.
That is absolutely right. So Keith actually invests, and myself as well. I've invested with some of our providers directly through the GRE Marketplace. These are people he trusts, his money with and his investments with. So these are not just random people paying us to, advertise with us per se.
Sure. Well, and I think probably, he's got such a big following, and I think at this recording, he's at 4 million downloads of the Get Rich Education podcast. So it's obviously his name attached to it. So if he says, hey, this company is great, and they turn out to be another, oh boy, I don't want to name names, but there was
I know who you're talking
guy
about.
that rhymes with Satan Norris. We'll just leave it at that. And definitely don't want to have your name associated with some of the less than reputable providers, let's say.
That's absolutely right. And we spend a lot of time vetting these providers. We do, of course, suggest and highly advise you to do your own due diligence on any of these people and make sure that you're comfortable with that investment. Don't just trust us blindly. That'd be crazy. But we do spend a lot of time vetting them.
Oh. All right. And now I've been, like I said, following Keith for some time. I've invested in a lot of markets. I'm primarily more cash flow driven versus, appreciation. Memphis and Birmingham are two markets that I personally invest in. Mm-hmm. I know he really talks up, say, Jacksonville, Florida, which just, for me, I like to invest in markets that I like to invest or visit personally. So I'm more just personally, I'm more of a Central Florida fan, Disneyland, Disney World versus the Jacksonville. But going over with some of these markets, I think there's been like Richmond, Virginia, Birmingham, Alabama, Missouri. Have there been any new ones recently added to the GRE Marketplace, and maybe the ones coming up here for 2022?
Yes, we've got a couple of new ones that are out there on the marketplace now that you can access. And then we've got some off-market deals that I'll give you just a little teaser about. So we recently brought on a fantastic provider in Southwest Florida. They have both long-term rentals, build to rent, they're new construction, they do cash flow. They're also bringing on board some short-term rental communities as well near the water. So I think that's something you may be very interested in if you like the short-term rental model as well. So that's Southwest Florida. We also brought on a new Alabama provider, and this provider is statewide. So they have communities kind of all over the place, just depending on where they target any given year. And these are also new construction. But one of the great things is that they can actually do 1031 exchanges. And so one of the things with the build to rent providers is everyone's seeing it take anywhere from, 8 months to 15 months for these new homes to be built. This one takes 90 to 120 days. So they can give you an address right off the bat. You can go ahead and identify that property, and you can move forward with your 1031 exchange, which is really nice for new construction.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I myself had not gotten to the, need of doing a 1031 at this point, could be down the line, but yes, the IRS is very, strict on that clock. I think it's, was it 90 days to identify and 6 months to put the proceeds in the new property, I believe. Okay.
Yeah, it's very fast. You actually have 45 days to identify the new property. Right. So it's even half of what you thought.
Gotcha.
And the crazy thing is, if you identify a property and go under contract on day 44, if you fall out of that property a couple days later, you got a problem. So you got to move pretty fast on these.
Yeah. Yeah. And then 6 months, and that, I know that's just calendar days, if that, I'm going to do it for the last day. It's like, well, sorry, that's Christmas. All the offices are closed. You can't get a extension from the IRS. Like, well, can't we move this to the 26th? Like, nope, sorry, you're done. And then the 1031 exchange blows up. So
that's exactly right.
I'm assuming this provider, then, do they have an on-staff lawyer or just a separate department to facilitate that, or how is that built into their operations?
Yeah, so they have their typical team that will, work on the construction. So they've got their build team. They've got the team that does the contracts and helps with the sales aspect of things. You can use any 1031 exchange provider you'd like. And I mentioned we do have one out there at the marketplace that you can use out of Georgia. So I'm a big fan of his.
All right.
And then they have the team that does the property management too. So they service, the properties only for their communities, and very experienced, lots of assets under management. So they do the full service.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
So, and then the GRE Marketplace you mentioned, like if someone, maybe they just have a relationship with their community bank and they only lend out money to the area, and this property is in, Southwest Florida or Dallas or whatever. I'm assuming these lenders can work nationwide, or at least the states that have the properties in. So
that is correct. Yep. We have a lender that does most states throughout the US that we recommend. I think you know her quite well.
Yeah. Had her on the podcast a couple of times. So
yeah, there you go. She's fantastic and she can service many states. So
perfect. Yeah. Well, and even some of the ones that's like, oh, we can't, service, New York or California. It's like, well, I don't know too many cash flowing areas of those two markets, but to each their own.
True. Fair. That's fair. We actually brought on recently a provider, and I'm not going to name their name, but they have several off-market deals that we can pair our investors with. And these are in some of those great cash flowing Midwestern markets, Indiana, St. Louis. So if you got to the GRE Marketplace, or, if you want to go to, here's another great resource for people. And hopefully, John, you've looked at this yourself as well. If you go to getricheducation.com/free course, we have a 1-hour mastermind course that Keith himself has developed on real estate investing. It is fantastic. It's literally the best thing I've seen out there. So if they go get that and they get on our list, we can contact you, and we're happy to share some of those off-market deals with you that are great cash flow long-term rental properties.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. And for my listeners that are brand new to the real estate game, off-market is that they're not on the MLS. They're not advertised where everyone, their uncle, can bid up the prices. And, at the time of this recording, we're seeing just ridiculous, 40 offers for one property, 30,000 above ask, and no contingencies. Off market is what you want when you're looking for a provider, because there's a lot less competition involved.
That's exactly right. Yep.
All right. This has been very interesting, and I personally like podcasting as well, because I seem to learn something as well every single time I'm on a podcast. As far as your journey, Aundrea, going into 2022, going forward, are you going to continue to, keep investing? Is there like a benchmark you have of, once I hit this, then I'm just going to move back to Georgia and retire on the beach, or what's kind of your overall plan?
Well, John, if you ask my husband, he's going to tell you whatever I say is not true, because every year I move my number a little bit, my financial freedom number. And so it's never really attainable. I hit it, and then there's another one. As far as 2020 goes, 2022 with investing, I am still actively investing. I'm doing some renovation value adds for short-term rentals on the coast right now. I do like the short-term market, but I also realize that at some point the market's going to shift. So you have to mitigate your risk with those short-term rentals. So still doing that, also buying long-term rentals. I have a house right now being built in Nicaragua through one of our Get Rich Education providers. And
okay.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. I want to get out there and visit that when it's finished this year.
Okay.
And then I'd mentioned to you right before we got on here, my husband's really going to be driving this, but we're opening up a crime scene cleanup company up here in Detroit.
Okay.
And we're looking to, get some deal flow and, some deals from that up here also.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah. Crime scene cleanup. Boy, I think we could probably just have a podcast on that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Alone, so.
Have me back in a year and I'll have some great stories for you, no doubt.
I'm sure. Yeah. So we saw that CSI episode, and Aundrea was a guest actress on it. So.
Yep. And we are it's a franchise I bought into, and our CEO of our franchise is potentially going to be on a show soon. So you may see me on there. You never know.
All right. All right. Well, as we're kind of wrapping this up, Aundrea, and I, appreciate your time, and glad we could finally find a time for our schedules to, between our family lives and business and everything else going on. Yes. If anyone was, I know you mentioned the GRE /free course, and I'll have all these links here in the show notes. But if anyone's interested, maybe in learning more about you, more about Keith, more about Get Rich Education, and maybe they're starting, scratch of I want to get started in real estate investing, but I just don't know how. What are the best ways to, reach out to you, learn more about what you and Keith are doing, and just overall get started, I guess?
Yeah, great question. So if you want to hear about the podcast and the properties and things we offer through Get Rich Education, email's best, and it's Aundrea, and I'll spell that because it's a little different. It's AUNDREA at getricheducation.com. So you can shoot me an email there and I'll contact you very quickly. If you're looking at investing in the Georgia market and you want to get some great short-term rentals on the coast and you want to contact me directly, you can find me on Bigger Pockets. I'll also respond to the Get Rich Education email as well. So whichever you prefer.
Okay. Yeah, I might have to do that myself. You had mentioned the Creature of Jekyll Island. I actually got to meet the author last year at the Summit on Sand with the real estate guys. It's like, okay, now I just want to visit the Jekyll Island and the hotel, where the Federal Reserve first started, was created and whatnot. But I didn't know there was such a real estate market there as well. So that's really interesting.
There is. Bring your family down. It is a great place for a family vacation. And I'm telling you, if I'm not there, I'll fly down and meet you guys there. And I'd be happy to show you around and get you those beers as well.
Yeah, perfect. You have to have a flight here and a flight there. So,
yep.
All right. So any last words, Aundrea, for any of my listeners? Maybe, I don't know, words of encouragement or anything. I know you mentioned the new providers and Alabama and Southwest Florida coming on. And obviously, Get Rich Education keeps growing and expanding, especially their YouTube channel.
Yes. No, the only thing, I would say is I know right now we're in kind of uncertain times and it makes a lot of people nervous, but if it's a great investment and it's cash flowing, move forward. Don't wait. Mm-hmm. I've been waiting for the crash since 2018 and I've missed out on a lot of deals for that personally.
Yeah.
So just keep going in your journey.
Yeah, I think a while back, Keith put it best. We already had a real estate crash, and it was a supply crash. We went from 1.5 million homes on the market to 500,000, and we've just been behind building and getting new properties online. We've kind of behind that for the last 12, 14, 15 years. So I think the people waiting for the crash, you might be waiting for a while, and I can attest. I kicked myself for not going into a fourplex in Florida back in 2017, 2018. Could have gotten a fourplex for $400,000. I'm sure that's worth about $650,000, $700,000 now, and I'm sure the rents have gone up as well too. Yeah. So, it's expensive as it is now. It's probably more expensive to even wait longer. So absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on, John. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm glad you could come on and appreciate you sharing your knowledge. And I'll have all the contacts and notes in the show notes for my listeners.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Aundrea.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to share, rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. For more updates, check out www.wealthandfreedomnexus.com. Remember, nothing on this show should be considered tax, legal, investment, or professional advice. This show is produced solely for educational and informational purposes. Please consult an appropriate and licensed tax, legal, real estate, or business professional for specific advice for your situation. For distribution or publication rights or media interviews, please contact the host.